Hello, so my name's Harry Ronchetti and I'm a freelance UX designer and React developer. And what that basically means is that I run a business which helps other people run their businesses through improving their websites, their online stores and their mobile apps to make users have a better experience. And sometimes I don't just do experience design, but I also code them as well. Now, I set up my business in June 2020. This was just after the first lockdown, and as you can probably imagine, with everything going online, even more so, and e-commerce booming, I thought it was just a good idea to take the leap at that time, and it's paid off really well since. So it was worth the risk. I graduated about 2 years ago, so I've had a couple of years of industry experience and placement year that I did at uni as well to help me kind of prepare for this. Other things that helped me prepare was probably working in a startup sized business. I think that this was so useful because, in comparison to when I did my placement year at a really big company, you go to work and you get used to your work day, but you don't see those decisions run at the top of the company that are kind of the core premise of the sort of calls you have to make when you run a business. It's usually always comes down to money and relationships with other people, like suppliers that you have to work with or clients. Working in a startup sized business really helped me see this firsthand instead of not getting any exposure to it at all, which would have meant that if I'd not worked in a startup beforehand, I would have had probably a lot steeper learning curve when I did start my business. So it was definitely very useful to do that. What motivated me to start my business was probably I've always wanted to run my business since a very young age. I call myself a freelance UX designer and React developer now, but in the past, at the age of sort of 17, I was already trying to do logos for people as like a freelance graphic designer. And since that age, I think there's only been probably a couple of months at most that I haven't been trying to do freelance part time alongside whether it was work or my degree. So it's definitely always been a motivation of mine, a kind of a dream that I wanted to make happen. I also noticed that being someone who designs and codes is not a normal career path. Most people do one or the other. So what I kept coming back to time and time again is that whenever I was in these companies, I would be lent into one or the other, and it would start to sort of whittle down the muscle, the design or development muscle that I wasn't exercising as much, and this kept happening. So I wanted a role that really helped me exercise both of my interests and passions rather than just one. So because not many businesses would allow me to do that properly, I thought I want to be able to create my own so I can. Another reason to why I have chosen to work for myself rather than an organisation is just because of freedom of lifestyle. And right now I manage my own time, almost as if when you're at university, you have your assignments that you need to focus on, but it's down to you to decide when to do them and get them done. Everyone works in different ways, so you kind of get used to the way that you work. And the way that I work is working quite a lot, but doing it at a pace which suits me and going and doing things that I enjoy at the weekends to make sure I have a decent amount of time off rather than simply just working all the time and being in complete burnout. I like to work, get really into it and get, some music on, bopping away and have a nice kind of atmosphere in the office rather than being all sat there in silence or something like that. So yeah, something that motivated me to start my business was definitely having a bit more freedom in the way I work, but also lifestyle. I plan to have career breaks quite frequently to keep my kind of creative juices flowing as a designer, and it's a lot more risky to do that if you have to quit a job rather than manage expectations with your existing clients to say I'm just going to have 6 weeks off at this point instead of leaving a job because you couldn't get that much off in a whole year. So that's definitely a big thing that started to convince me that it was a good idea. The best advice I've received for starting my own business was probably to actually have breaks. When I started out and before I started out, probably more so. I was simply working 7 days a week. I was doing a full-time job, and all my spare time was spent setting up the business and planning for it. After starting the business full-time, when my resignation finished, it's just I just went full into that for 7 days a week for about 2 or 3 months, and it just became so unsustainable. I kept flickering between burnout and then not doing too much afterwards, and then super hyper productivity, getting tons done, like 16-hour days. And it's a good way to work if you want to get something done fast, but if you just keep doing it again and again, it's not sustainable. So you end up having these periods of time where you don't get too much done because you are just knackered. So some amazing advice that I've received and taken pretty seriously now into the core premise of how I work is genuinely having weekends off and using them, even though you always want to just do a bit of work, it really refraining from that temptation and just doing something nice with with whoever you live with, because we're in lockdown, so you can't do anything with anyone else except virtually, or just catching up with people virtually at the moment, and hopefully in the future when COVID lockdown is over, seeing them in face to face and stuff. Another thing that I've always thought and got way more into recently is reading great books. I think that something I always sought after when I was in the workplace was looking for amazing mentors. And I think when you haven't worked in a business and you're a graduate or a student, you think, I'll get a job and someone who has like answers to every question I want to ask will be there to answer all of those questions. I don't know whether it's just my industry, but sometimes, that wasn't the case. I think you'll find that almost someone who you want to be like just sitting next to you, and half the time, everybody else is just trying to figure things out the same as you, which is exciting because you can become great friends that way. But reading great books allows you to tap into those kind of people that you'd probably never be able to meet yet until you get a lot more successful, but you can still hear what their thoughts are and get some tips from them and the way they summarize it. And you can also use things like reviews of books to be able to determine whether you actually are going to enjoy it and find one that's going to help you a lot. So I definitely think that 2 things of good advice would be having proper breaks, like weekends, and not abusing the fact that you could work all the time because you run a business, and read great books because they so help you improve. I've learned most of the great sort of strategies that I use every day from books, so I don't know how I would have learned them else if I didn't read great books. If I was giving someone advice who was thinking of setting up their own business, then I'd probably say, like me, because I've been considering running my own business for so long, work in a startup. Get as close to making those decisions that you would have to do running a business as you can, but reducing the risk entirely. So you're still paid by a salary, not actually, if it goes wrong, then you will have issues and you'll have to organise getting yourself paid some other way. It's, being in that position where you're close to the forefront of the decision making when people are running a business, but reducing risk a little bit is just pretty nice. The support I've had from the graduate and student enterprise has been great. I think for me, someone who helps other people's businesses succeed through like online and improving their experiences and making websites and apps for people, I already covered quite a lot of areas that they help other businesses, but 2 that they really helped me out that I didn't do was accounting and legal stuff. These are 2 things that realistically you can't just have a go at yourself. Sometimes you need someone who knows what they're doing, and they've got great access to mentors that will be able to give you tips or help you and do some of this sort of thing for you. So I definitely think I've struggled a lot more without the support from the graduate and student enterprise. When I face challenges, I think things that keep you going are probably due to the nature of being a bit of a perfectionist. I have just a crazy determination to just keep going anyway. But I think, and that's what leads to that burnout that I was talking about before. But something that I always think is a sensible way to keep you going if you're facing a challenge is think of the outcome, not think of what it's like right now where it's a challenge and it's hard, but actually keep going and imagine what the outcome will be after this challenge is over, because usually that if it's worth working at really hard, it's going to be something amazing. So if you keep bringing that to the forefront of your mind, it keeps motivating you and keeping you going. Where do I see myself in 5 years' time? I'd probably think for my business there's one of two things I could see happening, or what I'd love to happen. And being an individual kind of consultant, a freelance UX designer and React developer now, I'm a single person in my business. The brand of the business is me. I could keep that the same and start creating my own startup businesses that actually I utilize my skills that I offer other people to make my own businesses and make a couple of those. Software as a service, or SaaS, is a big thing that people use these, businesses are creating these days, which are, apps that they can make money from, but people can use to improve their lives. And I'd love to make some SaaS products, like mobile apps or online platforms for people to, use that I can make a living from, but also help them improve things in their life. There's so many out there right now. I'm trying to think of some examples like, recipe apps, things like that. I mean, one idea that I might be working on soon is online training. So if you wanted to teach yourself new skills, I think if this takes off, then that is definitely something I would love to spend my time doing, is running a business, a tech business, and still helping other businesses out when I have all of the other time that I'm not running the startup. However, because running a business, you do have to be pretty flexible. I could see it going another way as well, which is expanding my business in my consulting business and being almost like an agency where I have employees which I could mentor and grow the help that I give to other businesses. So I'd be hiring like junior UX designers and React developers, and building a company around me of people who are generalists that do design and code, because I think it makes you think in a unified, more different way to someone who just does one discipline. So yeah, I don't know. I guess in a way, either of those two things would be amazing to happen. So we'll just have to stay adaptable and keep going, with the flow, because that's what you need to do. I think if you rigidly stick on a certain, end goal, then you will be blind to see stuff that is blatantly telling you no, and you're just going to keep going at it no matter what, because that's what you've decided. I think you need to always be adaptable when you run your own business and respond to changes. I mean, think of COVID, for example, how much people have had to adapt because of that, but the people who haven't probably are struggling more. So yeah, I think that's definitely something I would always advise. And what have I learned since starting my own business? Well, I've learned a lot. I think as someone who'd obviously worked in 3 different jobs before, with a placement year and 2 graduate employments positions as well, I've had quite a bit of experience at my craft in industry, but you don't get as much exposure to the people, the clients that you're making it for when you're not working for yourself. I think if you're working for yourself, you see the decisions firsthand that the clients are facing. And something I've learned so much more as I'm going on is good business is done with people who like each other. I think there's a tendency in a service-based industry when you're doing work for someone else who's a client to just sort of be like, get the job done and then move on. But people, like relationships and trust that can further improve, certain accounts of, that you keep working with clients again and again, are always, they're just going to be better and better if you like each other. If you don't like each other and you just want to, get the job done and move on, then it creates kind of a bit more of a toxic environment to work with people within. But if you are a bit more sort of approachable, selective with the people that you think are similar to you, and you can tell there's going to be a bit of a good match there, then you end up building a business that you love turning up to every day, and you love the work that you do for people. you never end up sitting there going like, oh, I can't wait for this project to be over. You are almost like wanting there to be more projects with that people, and it's about, you know, finishing off a project and not thinking, thank God, but also, oh, I can't wait for the next one already. But it's just a case of availability and finance, because you can never blame people that you work with for not wanting to do every project with you, because sometimes it's a case of finance and availability, which is another thing that if you're in a service-based business, you'll learn very quickly. But yeah, I think, thank you for listening today. I appreciate the student and graduate enterprise team for giving me this opportunity to talk about my business. So thank you so much for that, and hope everyone has a great day.